Oh, I've been there, trying to choose between a traditional ATS or maybe we should make the switch to Salesforce. What do you need to know? We're going to talk about it coming up. Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Salesforce for Recruiters. I'm your host, Brad Owens, and I was just like you. I spent well over a decade in staffing and recruiting using various pieces of technology that never really fit what I wish they could do for me. And then I saw Salesforce and I went, where has this been all my life? And since then, I've dedicated my career to helping both the recruiting world and Salesforce understand what Salesforce can really do for this industry. So on today's episode, we're going to compare and contrast both the traditional ATS and Salesforce and help you learn from my journey of what I uncovered when I was comparing the two. So let's get the big one out of the way up front. Let's talk about customization and how these two compare. So when we think about a traditional ATS, the ATSs that I've had the ability to use mostly are rigid. They typically come with their own workflow, the way that they intend you to work through their system. And if you don't recruit that way, you're either going to bend your business to what that ATS will allow you to do, or not use the ATS really as it's intended. So I'm sure if you're in that camp of using a traditional ATS, there's probably some parts of your business process you wish could be reflected in your ATS, but it's just not able to do it. Then let's compare that to Salesforce, where Salesforce is highly configurable. If you use the right applicant tracking system, something like the Assemble applicant tracking system, which you can find at asymbl.com, if you're using that type of applicant tracking system, you have the ability to tailor this exactly to what your unique business process is. So you don't have to bend to the will of some ATS that was just configured a certain way out of the box. You can make it completely your own. What automations do you want to happen at each step? What stages do you want there to be? How many do you have in your process? It's completely up to you. Now that comes with pros and cons. Yes, it's not set up exactly out of the box the way that you'd want to use it, but with just some very basic user input, you now have the ability to have your ATS reflect your unique business process and help you do your work, not so much take your business process and try and confine it and fit it into what a traditional ATS offers you out of the box. So there's some big pros and cons there, but I think the pros far outweigh the cons, and I think Salesforce is a much better highly configurable environment for you if that's something that's important to you. Next up, let's talk about the second really big thing that differs from a traditional ATS to Salesforce, and that comes down to analytics and reporting. So when I was using traditional ATSs, and I used many throughout my career, what I would find is that the reports that they had for you out of the box and ones that you were able to make yourself were very confined to what they thought you might want to report out on. So there were the basics that you could understand around like number of applicants, number of send outs, the basic kind of things. Let's say I really wanted to break down my business and I wanted to have a report that breaks down my income or my revenue by line of business. So if I had my perm recruiting over here, my staffing business over here, maybe my exec recruiting side of my business here, I want to see how those break down. Can't really do that in traditional ATS. So enter Salesforce. Salesforce is well known for its ability to do incredible reporting just out of the box. Now, most people don't understand the power that it holds because if it exists inside Salesforce, you can report out on it. So if you have the ability to break down your lines of business by different placements or by recruiter or by geography, or if you really want to understand your spread and how that has changed throughout the year based on different lines of business, you can report out on that. As long as you're tracking that on your opportunities and on your jobs, you can report on that. So when it comes to analytics and reporting, Salesforce just absolutely dominates any traditional ATS because the traditional ATS is not built to be a reporting engine and to help you run your business. It's simply just built to be a tracker. And it comes out of the box how it is. But Salesforce, on the other hand, highly configurable, incredible reporting engine. I think Salesforce wins in this one. Next up, let's talk about the third biggest thing that I typically hear when companies are coming to me asking about a traditional ATS versus Salesforce, and that's automation. So for a traditional ATS, what you're typically dealing with is out-of-the-box automations, things that are set up to do this one thing this one way. Maybe you can tweak a couple little things about it, like maybe we want this action to trigger this thing, or send this email when they hit this stage. You can have kind of the basic level of automation, but you can't automate your system. You can't talk to other different systems in your automation workflows. You can't really configure those specific for your unique business process. They're just high-level automations that are built into the system. Now enter Salesforce. All of those things that are limitations of the traditional ATS just don't exist inside Salesforce. Salesforce has their own flow engine, which is their automation engine, which you can automate things inside of Salesforce, things that communicate outside of Salesforce, things that are systems that interface with your Salesforce integration. So you have a much, much greater capability to automate with a system based around Salesforce than you would with a traditional ATS. So if automation is something that you really would like to include more in your business process, Salesforce is the way. Not just what you can really configure out of the box, or if you're using the Assemble applicant tracking system, asymbl.com if you want some more on that. You have the ability to automate things in a very structured way if you want, or you can even start including those automations in AI. They have the Atlas reasoning engine, they've got Agentforce. All of that can help you with your automations and just power really any kind of automation that you want. So in the automation game, I think Salesforce just wins hands down. So next up on the list of questions I get when people are typically considering a traditional ATS versus Salesforce comes down to integrations. They want to know, hey, what does it work with? Well, with the traditional ATS, they typically have a closed ecosystem. So they have their own API that only integrates with other companies that they've already set up relationships with. So you really only have the ability to integrate with what they have set up for you. If there comes along a new piece of technology or something new that you use in your system that they don't integrate with, you're kind of stuck. So you're kind of stuck in ways that probably aren't going to benefit your business. Now enter Salesforce. When we talk about integrations with Salesforce, Salesforce comes from an open ecosystem. They have an open API that you can use various different tools to be able to connect really any tool that's able to communicate with other tools to Salesforce. So as long as there's APIs on both sides, you can set up an automation or an integration so that those things will talk together. Add on to that, Salesforce also has a vast app ecosystem that they call their App Exchange that honestly, most of the tools that you're already using will likely already integrate with Salesforce with just a click. Enter in Data Cloud, that they have their own data connectors to be able to pull data from different places. There's tremendous opportunity to integrate the tools you already use and your data sources with Salesforce. So in my opinion, when I was actually looking for, hey, what can I integrate with Salesforce? My answer that I was given, and that has proven to be true, is really anything. Even if there's an API that doesn't exist, you have MuleSoft. MuleSoft is able to make these connections that wouldn't typically exist in the ecosystem, but are made possible because of MuleSoft. So Salesforce just wins hands down when it comes to integrations over traditional ATS. So for our final side-by-side comparison of a traditional ATS versus Salesforce, I want to cover off on cost and pricing. Now, typically when someone comes to me saying that they're considering Salesforce, one of the big reservations they have is they think, wow, this is going to be incredibly cost prohibitive. But what they find is that it's actually not. It's actually incredibly competitive to what they're used to paying, and it gives you far more benefit per dollar than a traditional ATS would give you. So here's how it ends up breaking down. With the traditional ATS, what people are finding is that they're paying a blanket cost for all of the features that come with that ATS. But they're only using probably around 30 to 40% of that ATS. So their cost per utilized dollar is astronomical because they're only using about 40%, but they're paying for 100%. Now on the Salesforce side of things, the way that you can structure your contract with Salesforce is vastly different. So just to give you a little bit of education here, on the Salesforce side, you only pay for what your users need access to. So if you buy the full suite of what Salesforce has, where you have marketing tools and sales and service and all of their crazy data tools and everything else, you only have to pay for the users that access those tools. So if you have a team that's split up between, let's say, sales and recruiting, the recruiting users don't have to get all these massive sales tools, and the sales team doesn't have to get all these recruiting specific tools. So because of that, each team is paying for the licenses for stuff that they'll actually use. So your ROI, even though you're spending roughly about the same as a traditional ATS, your ROI on that is just so much higher. You're getting almost 100% utilization for what you're paying for. So while both of these things honestly end up costing about the same, your ROI on the Salesforce licenses are just tremendously, tremendously higher. And we see that across the board almost every single time we help a company transition from a traditional ATS to Salesforce. So with that all being said, for this side-by-side comparison, you can see a traditional ATS just does not hold up when you start thinking about it in comparison to a system like Salesforce. And Salesforce is not unattainable. It's cost efficient. It already has traditional ATSs that can fit into it. And if you really want to take advantage of it, you can use add-on applicant tracking systems like Assemble, which you can find out more at asymbl.com, which really unlock the true potential of Salesforce. So if I were you, and I have been you, I would start transitioning to Salesforce and start understanding that this is truly a platform that can help you recruit at levels that you've never been able to before and help automate your business and clean up your business processes and open up AI for you. Like, it's just, the opportunities are tremendous. So in the traditional ATS versus Salesforce game, I lean towards Salesforce. I'd be curious to get your thoughts. If you like this kind of content, there's plenty more. You can go to salesforceforrecruiters.com and find every single video I've put on this. There's well over 50 episodes now. And since you made it so far in this episode, I want to offer you a little treat. If you email me to hello@bradowens.com with questions that you have about using Salesforce for your ATS, I want to answer those directly for you. And I might even include it in the next upcoming episode of Salesforce for Recruiters. So if you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button because we'll be back with plenty more. I hope to see you on this next episode of Salesforce for Recruiters. Thanks so much. Bye.